Dr. Lata on board, and thank you so much for your time taking out for taking us through with this our virtual class, which is this sixth in its series, and we are delighted to have you here as a guest speaker. And also, I welcome to all our participants. Yes, there was a delay of 15 minutes. I won't take much time. Maybe a couple of minutes on our company, what we do on our vision, services, and offering. So my name is Varun. I had the sales and business development for IPC Health. A little bit about of our company. Uh, IPC Health is an online digital platform which helps the hospital support their staff with all the training and upskilling needs to improve quality of the delivery of care. So at the base of it, it comes with a comprehensive learning management system. Then it has quality compliance training on it. It also comes with the induction training module, which are available on our platform, which helps the hospital deliver uh, rather has a faster onboarding of the new joinees. Also have the online and offline training management system, which is a key feature of our platform. And I'll talk about the IPC Health Communicator and our content marketplace in my subsequent slides. So overall, IPC Health provides three key elements through our platform. One, which is a technology world-class mobile-friendly solution, having learning management system at the core of it. The second piece is the hospital workflows. We are streamlining some of the inefficiencies, like how we currently manage the whole talent management process through our workflows like Communicator, the training management system, the talent assessors, and of course, we also get to see a lot of reports and analytics on the platform. And the third piece is the content which we have on a platform. Of course, we talked about the induction module, like the code blue, code red, code pink, all of that is available. There are soft skill modules which are available on the platform. The latest NABH standards and the SOPs, all of that are also available, which can be delivered to our platform seamlessly. All we have done is we have taken all those standards and broken into 30 minutes kind of e-module, which can be accessed by the staff for their continuous learning and development. And of course, our association with the third-party provider, NABH I just mentioned, we're going to talk about the RCNI collaboration with IPC Health, and maybe second half of the year we will have the ACLS and BLS training, or rather certification, which will happen online first time in India through the on IPC Health platform. Yeah, talking about some of the success of our journey, we started just before the pre-pandemic era, now what we call, in January 2020 last year, and uh, within a year, despite the pandemic, our solution is powering 115 plus hospital today in India and in some of the Gulf countries, and 25,000 plus users are also benefiting from our solution, and we are helping them deliver better care as they're able to get their training access through our mobile platform. Some of the brand names are there, which you can see for your knowledge. And since IPC Health, we are committed to continuously improving our services and functionality, and a couple of functionality which we have just launched and services we're going to talk in my next slides. So one in that slot is the IPC Health Communicator. Now, what does Communicator mean? Today, in the pandemic era, we know that there is a need of a tool which helps you deliver your training online. Right now, how we are doing in a hospital setup is we are using different tools. We're shifting between different tools. IPC Health gives you that opportunity to conduct your virtual meetings and webinar through IPC Health platform itself and not using other platform. And not only that, it also allows you to view and download their records. So post webinar or virtual class, you would know how many hospital staff of your staff have actually taken those sessions. The second in this, which is similar to a virtual communicator, is the classroom session. Again, in the pre-COVID era, we used to do our physical classrooms. Lata, I mean, you would second that thought, but I think going forward as we coming out of the pandemic, but some of the some of us will go back to the physical classroom, but much of the classroom training will also go online, and IPC Health classroom feature helps you exactly do that. And not only that, it also allows you to do your assessments and keep a record of it on the platform. And not to mention about the flexibility which provides you to take your training anytime, anywhere, at your own pace. Yeah. And coming to the most exciting part of to our announcement today, we are proud to announce the launch of our RCNI CPD certificate program, first time in India, in association with RCNI. RCNI is a subsidiary of Royal College of Nursing UK, and we are, through our collaboration, bringing some of the best practices and some of the best courses, some of the best CPD certificate program into India. What we have done is we have customized 55 to 60 of their modules, which can be consumed by the Indian nurses and healthcare workers, and of course fits into the healthcare system. Some of the modules which I have listed here for your knowledge is reducing medication errors in nursing practices, which is also Lata's topic for today's webinar, and some of the other modules which you can see on the screen. Now, all of that is available just for the price of 1,500. It's a launch price, and you will get, on the day of sign up, you will get 30 courses access on the day one. And then to help you keep engaged on a platform, we will uh, continue to launch 2 new courses every month. And at the end of the year, it's an annual subscription. When you have done all your courses, you would be able to download, or you will receive a RCNI certificate through the platform. Yeah. So keep yourself more updated on the latest, and also to know more about RCNI CPD program, kindly do reach out to us at info@ipchealth.in. And as an organization, we are a purpose-driven company, and our goal is to improve healthcare in India by spreading knowledge through technology. And we ask you to join hand with us in that endeavor and spread the word in your peer group and also into the entire healthcare ecosystem in India. On that note, I would now ask Richa to introduce Lata. And yes, hope we'll have a very informative uh, virtual class. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Varun. Uh, I would like to welcome our speaker for today, Ms. Lata Nonis. A small introduction about her. Ms. Lata has a vast experience of close to 30 plus years in the nursing field. She has worked with various hospitals like Unity Health Complex, Ramakrishna Hospital, and Wockhardt. She is currently working with Fortis Hospital as the Chief Nursing Officer and has received numerous awards throughout her career, most notably receiving the Nightingale Award of Fortis, an award for the best approachable leader. Thank you so much, Lata, for coming for our session. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And first of all, my apologies to everyone, whoever is waiting for this. Sincere apologies from my end. So here, I think it is really a good initiative by IPC Health. So first of all, let me wish all of you a good beginning and all the best for your this initiation. So very good afternoon or good evening to all. And I am Lata Nonis, Chief Nursing Officer of Fortis Hospital, Bangalore. I welcome all the participants for this session. At the same time, I take this opportunity to thank organizers like IPC Health and especially to Renu Rauta, inviting me to share my thoughts on medication without harm. It is very, very important topic. Can I? Yes, thank you so much. So with an inadequate nursing education about patient safety and quality, fatigue, illegible provider handwriting, flawed dispensing system, and problems with the labeling of the drugs, nurses are continually charged to ensure that their patient receives a right medication at the right time. The purpose of this webinar, as Mr. Varun was telling, it is to review the medication safety in relation to nursing care. And I'm sure that through this webinar, all of you will be able to understand placing health in safer hand is very important piece, and especially medication without harm. So placing health in safer hand, it is a big piece for all of us to understand, and it is a huge responsibility to all the healthcare workers. And it comes medication safety or medication without harm, the responsibility doubles with everybody. So why medication management is very important? If we really look at it, we may be seeing a large percent of people who are all taking a prescription drugs, or a large percent of seniors taking multiple prescription drugs, or improper medication management can lead to adverse reactions and prolonged hospitalizations. And proper medication adherence and management can lead to successful recovery of short-term illness or control of chronic illness. So medication management is a very, very important piece for all the healthcare workers. So it is our responsibility to deliver the medicine without any harm. So what is medication? As all of you will be knowing, medication is defined as the substance used to promote health, to prevent diagnosis, or to cure diseases. Medication safety has been recognized to be important in the provision of patient care, with the evidence of now pointing to the medication errors as one of the leading cause avoidable complications and death. There is pressing need for a better understanding of the nature and scope of medication errors, and this will improve current clinical delivery system. So if we look at the WHO, what they are telling, every 300 patients admitting to hospital will have one error. That is the medical error. And if we really look at it, as per their study, it shows that every 300 patient, one patient goes as a death. So medication, as I have written over here, they are very great tool, but use them wisely and safely. That is our very important. So coming to the next slide, yes, here it is coming as a safety. What is safety? As all of you will be aware, what is safety? Safety is the conditions. It is a steady state of an organization or a place doing what it is supposed to do. Safety measures are to reduce the risk to human health. Now, when we are looking at the healthcare or the healthcare organizations, we would have gone through many safeties. Few of them, even Varun was telling about, Mr. Varun was telling about it, code blue, code pink, all those things. ACLSY we are learning, BLSY we are learning, all those. So there is something called environment safety, radiation safety, occupational safety, fall safety, surgical safety, equipment safety, blood transfusion or infection control, many other things. But here I'm going to emphasize on, and we are going to discuss about the safety is with safety of medication without any harm. And safety has many steps as you see over here. No, please, the previous, yes. That is, yes, stands for sense the error. What do you mean by sense the error? See, when we are giving medications like a high alert medications, we should know this is going to give an arrhythmia. So we have to sense the error, or we have to be with the proactiveness, we have to give the medication. Second one is act to prevent it. What will be the act to prevent it? See, when we are starting to give, is there is a red dot present? Do we have to have a double check? All those things we may have to follow. And next, follow the safety guidelines. That is, most of the organizations would have prepared standard operating procedures or policies and procedures for every steps what they are taking in the organization. So same way here, even in the medication safety, we have a policy and SOP. Please follow all those things and inquire into accidents and death. It is very important piece. See, after an incident have happened, we may have to raise a CQI or a incident reporting, and we have to go in depth to understand what have gone wrong. and do an RCA or a corrective and preventive action and do the needful. Next is take appropriate remedial measure. So doing an RCA is not sufficient over here for when we are thinking about the safety. We may have to take an appropriate remedial measure. For that, what we may have to do, we have to implement, and it has to reach whatever the process change or policy change to the friendest person or whoever is the friend end warriors. And we may have to re-audit it to understand is the process what we have placed is properly working or not. And it is whose responsibility? Yes, all of us have to take this responsibility. Can I move to the, yes. Now I will take you through the importance of medication safety. Medication safety and taking precautionary steps are extremely important to prevent any reactions and death. Whether a patient is prescribed an opioid or general medications, or they should follow the steps to ensure the medication safety. An adverse event could range from patient having spent an extra day in the hospital or missing a dose of medicine. Events are very harm resulting from the use of medication and include allergic reaction, side effect, or over medication or any other type of medication error. So adverse drug events are a serious public health problem. We have to be very careful with this. And unintended medical errors are big threat to patient safety. So although there is no proper Indian data is not available for this, but a WHO list among top 10 killers are the adverse drug events. So we have to be very clear about the medication safety when we are giving the medicines to anyone. So coming to the what is medication safety per se? So with the growing reliance on medication therapy as the primary intervention or for most illness, patients receiving medication interventions are exposed to a potential harm as well as there is benefits. Benefits are effective management of the illness and disease or progression of the disease or the improved patient outcome with a few errors. But medication can arise from unintended consequences as well as medication error. So is the medication safety is very important? Yes, which may be defined as the freedom from accidental injury during the course of medication use or those activities to avoid or prevent the correct medication related harm. Next slide. Yes. How to ensure the medication safety? There are few steps what we may have to see. So first step is verify any medication orders and make sure it is complete. What is the meaning of it? It means there is a requirement to write the prescription as a nurse, and we must know that the name, dose, route, frequency, etc. of the medication. So when we see the medication chart, we should make sure all these things are present on the medication chart. And if most of the organizations are going for accreditation now, like NABH or JCI, so most of the organization will have, there is a great role for the clinical pharmacist. So what they do a reconciliation of the medication. They will be just checking through the, if it is the right medicine to the right patient. That is what a clinical pharmacist role in the medication safety. If they feel that during the reconciliation, okay, if they find that this medicine is not fit to be given, they have a role to inform to the concerned physician. Then second point is check the patient's medical record for an allergy or a contraindication to the prescribed medication. So it is very important for us to understand this, because as nurses, here again, there is a huge role for the nursing team, because at the time of primary assessment itself, we have to check for any allergy, or if there is an allergy, what we may have to do, we may have to put an allergic band along with the identification band to prevent any further errors. And also we have a role that to most of the organization will have an allergy sticker which will be placed onto the medication chart. So this can be prevent the near miss event. As a safety measure, we do an allergic band as well as the allergic stickers. Third step is prepare medication for one patient at a time. That is very important. So as nurses, sometimes we are very, very busy. So what we may do, we may take shortcuts. At any cost, please do not prepare more than one medicine. The dilution or the concentration, it can be an issue. Always use the case file while preparing a medication. See, what we may think, we may usually what we do, we have a little overconfidence at time when it is coming a regular patient. We are seeing for the second day or third day. So what we do, we may not carry the case file along with us, but that is not a right way. So do not take shortcuts at all while preparing a medicine. And do not carry more than one patient drug in the tray. That is very important. Even when we are prepared, if it is not prepared at the bedside, when we are carrying the tray, what we may have to do, we have to put the label, then only we have to carry the tray along with the patient name and the medicine name, along with dilution and the dosage. The next part is very important piece. Educate the patient about their medication. Why we may have to educate the patient? Is it is very important? Yes. It will help them to calm down the anxiety. So what happened? They can be a part of their own treatment. And educating a patient, why it is one more, how it will be preventing the error. See now, for example, if during our busy schedule or busy time or maybe due to absent mind, we would have given for an example, we would have given insulin to the patient, but the nurse, while coming back from the room, if we have not documented it, there was another call and the nurse have moved off. If we would have educated to the patient that yes, I have given insulin, the second, even though the nurse go to give the insulin, the patient himself or herself may explain that no, I have received a medicine. So we can avoid any errors. That's very important that we have to educate to the patients about their medications. Next, follow all the rights of medication administration. As we have learned during our nursing period, all of you will be knowing what all the medication rights. If not, I'll be talking about that in the following slides. Yes, thank you. So next is what is medication error. As all of you know, medication error is defined as a preventable event that may cause or lead to inappropriate medication use or patient harm while the medication is in the control of the healthcare professional, patient, or consumer. Please understand the word that it is any preventable event, because we have an SOP, we have a protocol how to follow it. And if we follow that, there we can avoid a medication error. That is what it is, a preventable event. And most common medication error in the United States are administering a wrong dose, or even few studies have shown that the wrong dosage of medication and giving a wrong medication or incorrect route of administration are the reason for medication error, which is reported. Okay. Now who is responsible for all these things? Everyone has a role in preventing a medication error, or everyone has a role to promote the safe medication. So what are the factors contributing to these medication errors? See, I have made that into 3 buckets. You can see here. One is human related, second is system related, and third one is medication itself. Okay, medication related. So I'll just take you through few points on human related. If all of you think, yes, it can be the staff issue or the patient issue. So mostly when it is coming to the staff issue, most of the staffs, they will be telling that, wow, it is a very busy day. We are overworked. So what happened when we overwork? If we have a thought process like that, we tend to do mistakes. Next one point is like undertrained. If a fresher coming to the system or the person does not have enough knowledge onto the medication and why it is given, how it can be given, if we do not have a knowledge, then again that can lead into errors. Third one is competency of the people. Competency, what I meant by competency of the people, if the people does not have a proper knowledge, is it has to be given through the peripheral line or it has This can be given only through a central line or the dilution of it. Okay, for example, if potassium, when we are giving, it has to be diluted in a proper manner, and what all the complications of it. If the person does not know, then again we may go and just push the dose, and patient can get into trouble, and medication error can be happen. Next is a major point today. We are all in the technological world. So what's happening? Distraction. So what we have taken a call in our organization during duty hours, there is no mobile phone. That is a huge distraction what we are facing. So distraction is another area where it can lead the medication error. So if someone is using a during duty hours, my request is please do not use it. Next is if you yourself are not doing well, if you have any illness, if you are feeling very tired, what happened? There is an absent-mindedness will come, and you may not give enough concentration, and it can lead into an error. And even at the same time, if you are stressed also, it is the same way. And next is coming as the end of the shift. We are all hurry-burry to complete the job. So what we do, if there is an admission which has come, that is when we do the job with a lot of hurriness or with a lot of stress, that can cause medication error. So it is my request to everyone, whoever over here is, please keep yourself very calm when you are giving an administration of medication. Next is system related. System related, it is not the computer system. It is the policies and procedures what I have meant. So what is happening is system related. So lack of communication. If there is no hand of communication from one department to the other department, that can give a error because when the handing over is not happen properly. Second is disorganized workplace. If we do not have a proper policies and procedures and inadequate tool to complete the work, sometimes when a medicine have to go through an infusion pump or a syringe pump, we take a shortcut that manually we may think of running it, and it may go either fast or it may not have reached to the patient in a right manner. So we have to have enough tools and machineries which will be helping us to prevent any medication errors. And lack of supervision is also one more added point to this, because if there is no supervision, what happens if the system does not have a supervision skill not developed for somebody, and we have not given a supervisor to monitor all these things, even that it can cause a medication error. Now coming third point is medication related. Medication related is like as all of you will be knowing, we have look-alike and sound-alike medication. So if we take an example like a Xylocaine and Xylocard, if it is look-alike and sound-alike medications, so if you do not have enough knowledge for what purpose it has been used, or we do not have a knowledge on when to give this, that can cause a problem and medication error. Then second, with the medicines, if there is a multi-vials we are using, it can be either drawn more or less. So even that can give a problem. So these are all human related, system related, and medication related errors are the main thing. Next, coming to the medication error, the types of medication error. Types of medication error includes, I have just mentioned the 6 types of medication errors, which will be a prescribing error, which will be caused by the physician themselves. And next is transcription error. This also goes to the physician or the doctors themselves. And next is indenting error, dispensing error goes to the pharmacy. And other 3, you can see there is, I have just mentioned as a nurse, indenting error, administration error, and the documentation error comes purely from the nursing team. So it is a big piece. Out of 6, 3 are the nurses are responsible for 3 errors. So we have to be really, really careful with that. Next. So now I'll take you through the categorization of errors. All these errors okay, have any event will be categorized into different levels to understand and to do an RCA or CAPA, or we have to change a policy. So even the medication errors have been categorized into 10 categories. They are, first one is A to I. It is, for all of your knowledge, it is A to I. So the first one is circumstances of events that have the capacity to cause error. That is almost like no error. So where it will be happening, like if there is a written order, there is a policy that all the medications have to be written in capital letters, and we cannot use a T for tab. We have to use TAB, then whatever is the medicines. Okay, so that is counted as a category of errors. Then coming to the B, an error occurred, but the medication did not reach the patient, and the error is happened, but there is no harm to the patient. This can be wrong strength. We may intend 25 mg, but by mistake from the pharmacy, it can come as 50 mg, or 50 mg is intended 25 mg come to the department, or it is almost like a dispensing error. Now, error number C, that is an error occurred that reached to the patient, but it did not cause patient any harm. It is again a dispensing of medication. Incorrect medication reached to the patient, but it has not given any harm to the patient. Then category D, that is an error occurred that resulted in the need of an increased patient monitoring, but no patient harm. So I can give an example. Earlier I told you about the insulin overdose, okay, or a wrong medication or a double dose. When it will happen if the nurse have not documented it properly. So that is the category D. And category E is an error occurred that resulted in the need of a treatment or intervention and caused a temporary patient harm. That is error and harm. So again, insulin overdosage, insulin have been given because there is no signature by the or documentation by the nurse, and re-administered. Okay, patient is not so conscious to inform you that yes, I have taken the second dose. So here what is happening? Needed treatment for intervention or temporary cost. We may have to check again and again the GRBS, prolonged stay in the hospital, it can go into. Next slide, please. Yeah. So coming to F. F is an error occurred that resulted in initial or prolonged hospitalization, and it caused a temporary patient harm. For example, I can tell for example, the medicine called Tramazac or a Tramadol. Okay, if we have to give Tramadol, there is a methodology. We may have to dilute it. We have to give it under monitoring, then only. But if the person does not have enough subject knowledge about a Tramadol, and it can, if the nurse have gone and pushed this medicine, it can cause hypotension. At times, we may have to move them to the ICU to keep monitoring. So this is coming into the category F. Next is G. An error occurred that resulted in permanent patient harm. So here I can give as an example, there are few medications which can be given to arterial line, which can be given to IV line, which can be given through central lines. Okay, there are different routes of administration. And in case if we have given some medication through the arterial line, and if it has caused an emboli and it has become a permanent harm, sometimes it lead up to an amputation of the limb. Okay, and next is an H. H is an error occurred that resulted in near-death event. Like if we have not noted at the time of admission, the allergies, okay, anaphylactic shock can give a near-death event, or even sometimes patients can get into a cardiac arrest as a near-death event. And the last one is an error, it is I, an error occurred that resulted in patient death. Example, as I told you, if we do not know how to give a potassium, okay, it has to be diluted, monitored, it has to give through in a particular milli-equivalent through a syringe pump or an infusion pump. If we do not know that, then if a nurse goes and push, or the healthcare worker go and push that, then it can cause death. So next, yes. Coming to the medication safety. No, so now we have learned about the types of medication error. Now I just take you what all the types of medication what we have seen. Which are they? Like general medicine, lookalike and sound-alike medications, and high alert medications, high concentrated electrolytes, and narcotic medication, chemotherapy, vaccine. These are all few types of medication generally we are dealing with. That is the reason, and I maybe you can have any doubts on this, you can have a question onto this. Okay, that's why I thought I'll just tell you the types of medications. Next is how we have to store this medication. It is very important that we have a responsibility to make sure that the efficacy of all these medicines are being maintained. So it has to be stored in the cool and dry place, and should be kept away from direct sunlight, and to be stored as per the temperature suggested by the manufacturer. So as soon as any medicine is opened, along with that the leaflet comes. So we have to read through that and understand what is the suggested temperature by the manufacturers. And all emergency drugs should be stored separately in the crash cart. Emergency drugs in the sense, it is the life-saving drugs, which has to be along with the crash cart. So if any cardiac arrest happens, we can immediately act on to that. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the usually, what is the temperature and humidity is maintained in the about the medication. So we have a fridge temperature maintained between 2 to 8 degrees. It would have been mentioned on each vial, and freezer temperature is between -16 to 22 degrees. Now, other than this, normal general medicines are stored in the treatment room or medication storage room. So we should maintain a temperature of 15 to 25 degrees centigrade, and we should maintain the humidity of 40 to 60%. It is very, very important to maintain this temperature and humidity. And what we have done in Fortis Hospital, we have a every day, every shift check on all these things. So we have made a monitoring chart for this, and our quality team do or the clinical pharmacy team do a audit on regular audit to maintain the medication safety. Next. So I just wanted to tell you a few principles of medication. So first thing, I just want to explain you rights of medication. As all of you know about this rights of medication, earlier days we had only 6 rights. Now it has become 10 rights. So all of us should know the rights by heart, and we, not only keeping in the brain, we may have to even implement every moment whenever we are taking any medication. So they are like a right drug, right patient, right dose, right route, right time and frequency, right documentation, right history and assessment, right to refuse. Patient has a right to refuse also, and right evaluation, right education and information. So if patient refuse, yes, we have to inform to the concerned consultant, and also the documentation of that has to be done. And right education and information is a big piece. That's why all of us should be aware about every medication what we are handling day-to-day basis, which we are handling with the patient. Next slide, please. Yeah. Then, now we may be thinking that who prescribes the medication? Usually the doctors prescribe the medications. So when the doctors prescribe the medication, we have to know that, yes, it has to have the 7 factors with that. So one is patient full name and date and time, drug name, dosage, route of administration, and time and frequency. Frequency of administration and signature of the physician. And please understand, all these things the physician have to be right with a lot of legible handwriting. So if we have any question mark onto legibility, if we are not able to understand what it is, what we may have to do, we may have to go back and find out from them. Then only we should start with the medication preparation or administration. Please do not take, do not assume things and do not take a shortcuts. Okay, next. So this, I'm sure that most of us will be knowing about the route of medication, because this we study from the first year onwards. It is intravenous, intramuscular, intrathecal, subcutaneous, oral, rectal, vaginal, sublingual, optic, nasal, inhalation routes, transdermal, and ocular route. You may be wondering why I have put this. Even though we know all these things, it can cause medication error. Sometimes if we have to give a medicine like intramuscular, some painkillers, but there we had an incident of having medication error. The nurse have thought, oh, it can be diluted and given intravenously. So those things can happen if we do not have a knowledge. So again, I urge all of you, read the prescription, understand the route very well, then only administer the medications. Thank you. Next. Okay. Now I'll take you points for a good prescription. This is very important and very interesting slide. Why means, see, there should be a legible order. If legible order is not there, a nurse or anyone cannot read the prescription. Second one is avoid abbreviation for any drug name. We cannot put one to AKT, okay? But sometimes we may have to understand from them what is it, okay? Or where is the combination of medication comes. Next is include the right form and the dosage and route, frequency of administration of medication. Coming to the, always see that all the medicines are written in capital letter. Then omission order should not be cancelled. It should be always cancelled with a single line. You cannot scratch it, okay? And write the fresh order with the time, name, and signature of the concerned doctor. We may have to request to them to rewrite it. Why this is very important? Because sometimes from the IV form, it may be changed into a tab form. Okay, so that time we may have, they cannot scratch it and write it. They may have to rewrite it. Then stat medication or SOS medication must be written with the date, time, and sign of the prescriber, and no overwriting should be allowed, and do not use unapproved abbreviation at all in your healthcare organization. Next. So coming to the transcription error, I just wanted to touch upon policy on transcription of drugs, from which all paper it will be moved. So an order will be transcribed by either by the registrar or by the duty RMO or by the physician themselves. So the transcription, which all papers it is moving, post-op orders to treatment sheet. This you may be knowing. As soon as the patient is moved out of the OT, the orders are written in the post-op order sheet, and it will be moving from there to treatment chart. Next, if a patient is moving from ER, so ER orders to treatment chart. Next, old treatment chart to new treatment chart. Admission history in that current medication to treatment chart. ICU, when we are having a shift out from ICU to what? So ICU treatment chart to what treatment chart? And sometimes the patient come from OPDs for an admission. So OPD notes to the treatment chart, and from doctor's progress note to treatment chart. So these are all the various chart to treatment chart it will be prescribed, and the errors can happen. But all the transcription should also follow all the elements of an ideal prescription. There is no shortcuts over there. Next, please. Okay. Now, policy on change of medication order. As I told you, if there is a vomiting order, if there is a stop of medication, how we have to do. Any change in the current treatment regime should be appropriately documented in the treatment chart, and time, date, and sign of the concerned doctor for the change of orders should be written along with the side medication. That is very, very important. Next slide. Now, there is stat orders. Along with stat orders, I will just tell you about the SOS orders also. That is, if necessary, we have to give some painkillers or something. So the stat orders should be documented appropriately in the treatment chart. In the column, see what we have made it for a column separately for the stat orders. So it will not be get mixed with the regular treatment sheet. So when the column is assigned, there they have to write it, and along with the date, time, and signature. And stat orders should also follow all the elements of an ideal prescription. And at the same time, I just would like to tell you, even SOS order, they have to write it very clearly when it have to be used, if required. When the patient is having the temperature raise more than 100 degree, then please give the SOS order of paracetamol. It has to be legibly written. Coming to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Medication management process. In our organization, I have just seen this and I have thought to, this will be the way how we are managing the medication. So that is the reason I have put this slide, even though you may be aware, it is self-explanatory. Okay, so the storage, the medicines come from outside, it will be stored in the pharmacy by the pharmacist, and it moves as a prescription by the physician. And ordering, that means intending from the department, will be done by the nursing team. Dispensing to the department will be done by the pharmacy team, and the receipt of the medicine is done by again by the nursing team. Verification and acknowledgement, whatever have intended, is it has come or not, so that acceptance done by the nursing. And at the bedside locker, the storage will be done by the nursing. The medication administration is done by the nurses, and documentation and monitoring is done by the nurses. So if you really look at it, here around, I think 10 processes are there. Okay, in the 10 process, the nurses does most of it. So we have a huge responsibility on preventing medication error. Next. Coming to the LASA medication, as all of you are reading here, it is look alike and sound alike medication. See, this is very dangerous actually, look alike, sound alike. And it is no more called like LASA, it is called LA, look alike and sound alike. It is two different, look alike, sound alike. So La and Sa it is. So LASA drugs should be separately stored in the medication cupboard in non-alphabetic order. See, we have a hygienic factor. We preferably all other general medication or like in an alphabetic order. So it's easy for us to procure, and when we are taking it for the patient. Okay. So here LASA medication cannot be stored in the cupboard in an alphabetic order. It has to be stored as a non-alphabetical order. And LASA drugs should be separated from each other with at least 2 or 3 other medication. So if you look at the picture, you can see that LASA medications are kept in between the other medicines. Okay, but the label have to be, the LASA warning label have to be there, that to remind the staff to be vigilant while picking this item. So if when, especially it is with the respules, when we are going to pick up a duolin respule, there can be another same look-alike respule will be there. So if this sticker is there, we can take another alert and prevent a medication error or near miss. Next one. Coming to the high alert medications. So the high alert medications are defined as those medications which could cause an immediate life-threatening condition. And the administration occurs. Errors with these medications are not necessarily more frequent, just their consequences. See, it is not that we may be doing many administration of high alert medication. That is what it meant. But what happens if you are not aware how to administer a high alert medication, the consequence can be very, very dangerous. So usually the high alert medication list is taken from the ISMB, most of the organization, and it will be kept as a master list in the pharmacy. ISMB means the Institute for Safe Medication Practice. So it will be kept in the pharmacy. And if there are sub-stores, even sub-stores will be having this list. So high alert medication have to be stored under lock and key, and high alert medication should be stored separately even in the fridge. Not only even in the fridge, if you are having a high alert medication at the bedside, even there it has to be stored separately. And each department should display the list of high alert medication and check all the rights of medication without fail before administration. This is very, very important piece. I just wanted to tell that. And if you look at that picture down, see the high alert medications have stored with a high alert sticker onto them, and the right side you can see the red dot indicate a high alert medication. Why this is important? When a nurse goes to pick up a medicine from the store or from the cupboard where there is it has been stored, she get an alert that yes, this medicine is a high alert medication, and high alert medication has a different policy. It has to be double checked always, and it has to be supervised while preparing and while starting. So storage of high alert drug will be with a single lock and key with a high alert sticker on the container, and red dot on each vial is very important. Next, please. And high concentrated electrolyte. So now I just wanted to tell you the high concentrated electrolytes are few names are like potassium chloride, concentrated sodium chloride, that is 3% saline, and magnesium sulfate above 25%. So all electrolyte storage cabinet will have a warning sign pasted on the inner door stating concentrated electrolyte solutions, and it has to be the all high concentrated electrolyte solution to be stored, and it has to be shown as diluted. Before use, it has to be diluted, and it has to be stored. Even the diluted high concentrated electrolyte should not be stored more than 24 hours. It has to be stored under lock and key at the bedside, and with a proper label in separate container, and which is prominently labeled. Nobody should miss out a high alert medication labeling. And no verbal order for high concentrated electrolyte. It should not be encouraged at all. And physician order include the rate of infusion for this solution. That is very, very important. And all prescription for administration of concentrated electrolytes will be written unless it is very, very emergency necessitated and taking a verbal order. We should not encourage a verbal order at all. And physician orders include the rate of infusion for this solution and does not use the such as administer 1 ampule. Okay, can you, if somebody is asking, they cannot write it as 1 ampule. It has to write it as either milliequivalent or in a milligram or in an mcg. Instead, the exact amount we may have to ask them to write it. So again, there should not be any shortcuts. And here you can see the picture as showing how it has to be stored. And I've just put a few pictures for you people to see how the labeling has to be done. Next. So coming to the narcotics, this may be, all of you may be knowing about the narcotics, and it may be a familiar word for you. So narcotic have historically been used to refer to a number of mind-altering substances, as well as to provide a broad legal designation for a range of illicit drugs. So the Drug Enforcement Administration, that is DEA, okay, more specifically define narcotic drug as those that relieve pain and dull the senses. And the use of the word is most commonly associated with opioid drugs. So the term narcotic originally referred medically to any psychoactive compound with numbing or paralyzing properties. So you can see few examples like pethidine, morphine, fentanyl I have written. So they are all even coming under the Controlled Drug Act. Okay. And how you have to store these narcotics? Only presently Karnataka have come up with a new rule that there is no sub-store is allowed in any organization. So only one store is allowed in any healthcare organization. So only one place we have to store. So we in Fortis, we have taken the pharmacy as the storing place for the narcotics, and they do get an indent, and patient wise indent they will get it, and they the nurses go and bring it and use it. Okay. And the supply should be always with the 3 prescriptions, and the storing is done under double lock and key. So the 2 people will be carrying the key for that. So if there is a indent and this 3-layered prescription goes to the pharmacy along, the nurse take it and go, then 2 people come and open the cupboard, and then only they are checking and issuing the narcotics. Next. So coming to the verbal or telephonic orders. This is a really interesting piece here, because all of us would like to ask, can I am having headache, what medicine can I take? It is like a verbal order. So are we allowed to take verbal or telephonic orders? So that's a question mark. But verbal and telephonic orders shall be taken only during emergency or life-threatening situation. We have to understand that. Handling a verbal or telephonic orders, the prescribing doctor should spell out the medicine's name, okay, appropriately, and medication or treatment dose of the medicine. Like in an emergency, if we have to give an atropine, they should not tell that atropine 1 ml, 2 ml. No, it have to tell as it as 0.6 mg and state the purpose of the order, date and time it should be mentioned. Next. So the request from the physician to spell out the name of the medication or the treatment and clarify the dosage. That is why when you will be seeing when there is a ACLS or BLS, when it is happening, there is one person who is the leader, and when they give the order, the person who have listened to that will be repeat back about that to clarify the dosage, route, frequency of administration, date and time of the treatment. Like numerical digit will be pronounced separately. For example, I have written here 1, 6 instead of 16 and reinforce the instruction to the prescribing physician about the need of sign of the document immediately or within 24 hours. You can bring a policy that within 24 hours, the sign off have to happen and sign appropriately the received order in the doctor's sheet. So what the nurse does, they receive and writes it down. And then second part is repeat back with a proper numerical digit and the doctor confirm or validate the same order. Then only verbal or telephonic order have to be carried out. Next, please. Yes, verbal orders are not permitted for chemotherapeutic agents. Very, very important. And please understand, if the doctor is not privileged, okay, if they are not an oncologist, even they have no privilege to write a chemotherapeutic drugs. So this is a policy. Verbal orders are not permitted for non-formulary medications also. So formulary have to be maintained by every organization, and it has, if any medicine done non-formulary, there is a process to be followed and which will be taken through the pharmacy and therapeutic committee. Then verbal permitted orders are not permitted for narcotic drugs also, and verbal orders are not for high alert drugs. Verbal orders are permitted for regular formulary medications only. So I'm sure that with this, you will be knowing how much importance are there for the verbal orders. Then we as Fortis Hospital, we have come up with a verbal order stamp. So as soon as the nurse receives, they put the stamp. So what happened during the audit time, clinical pharmacist, during the rounds time, it will be easy for them to understand any verbal orders have happened and is all the policies are followed or not. So if any errors are happen, can we have to correct it. So the stamp we are using only mostly for our audit purpose. We have put the seal. Okay, next. So coming to the reporting error. Before going to the reporting error, I just wanted to tell you, see, all these things what we have spoken is mainly for the adult patients. But I had a thought yesterday. I just have to take you through few points on the pediatric drug administration. I'm sure that it will be helping you. So providing an explanation about the drug therapy according to the child level of understanding, it is very important, because if the child is not cooperating to receive the medicine, then we will have to force them. It will become very difficult. So use visuals, materials or demonstrations to enhance the understanding of procedures and allow the child to participate as much as possible in the medication procedure. And do not restrain the child. So even if you have to restrain, what we may have to do, we have to do it very firmly and gently. And restrain during infusion include gentle physical restraint. When the infusion is being started, when we are starting it, see, we may use spleen or straps. So that is very important. And keep the drug and equipment, especially the trays, which is from the away from the eyesight of the pediatrics patients. And do not scold them, because sometimes the parents get frustrated and they may show that what to do. So they may start scolding, but it is our responsibility to calm them. Otherwise, baby may start crying, okay, and we have to comfort them, and do not try to administer any oral medicine when the baby is crying, because what happens, suddenly it can get choked. So this is only few tips I thought I just wanted to inform you. And when if it is really a small toddler or a small child, do not mix medication with the milk, because we have a habit that sometimes along with the medicine, along with the milk, we will mix and give. So sometimes incompatibility can happen. So that is not at all right. And do not add drug to the feeding formulas unless advised by the physician, and check the oral cavity to make sure that the baby has swallowed the medication and it is not in the stored in the mouth. So now I am coming to the reporting of the error. Okay. So here I just wanted to inform you all, this is an important piece. Yes, it is very, very important to report the error. Or should we have to put it under the carpet? No, we should not do that. Okay. So we have a responsibility on safe administration of medication. So here we have to bring a culture of self-reporting errors. It is very important to encourage the people to do the self-reporting. And why the people will be scared to report an error? Maybe they are thinking about the punitive action and they put all the errors under the carpet. Then once it starts putting under the carpet, that is not at all a healthy environment, and we cannot have a growth in the system. So the system, what will happen to the system? System may collapse. So we have to encourage all to do the self-reporting, and may compliment the person who is giving you more reporting the errors rather than punishing them. The responsibility in all of us to bring a culture in the system and build everyone to accept the mistake and understand the need of a reporting error. So please to understand, the reporting error can save many errors in future. That is what even our goal will be and goal should be. So now, how to report an error? That is a question mark. So each organization should develop an incident reporting form. So here what we have thought is, rather than incident reporting or rather than a event form, we have made it as the name have described as continuous quality improvement form, that is CQI form with the relevant information. Why we have made CQI form? Because if we ask someone to write a reporting form or an event form or an incident reporting form, it gives a negative. Here we have put it as a continuous quality improvement form. So it's our responsibility to bring a process of submitting this form to the quality department within 24 hours, and with all relevant columns are filled. And at the same time, here we will be mentioning the category of errors. Like as I discussed, is it belongs to A or B or C or anything between A to I. Why this is very important? Because above category C errors, we have to do a root cause analysis. We have to have a team of people who will be doing the root cause analysis, brainstorming session, why the error happened, and come up with a corrective and preventive action. And after that, next step is to understand the incident, analyze it properly, and come up with if there is a requirement for a policy change, process change, or it is only onto the training requirement. So then we have to make a fishbone analysis and then do the need of the R. And after that, implement the new process, and we may have to re-audit it to understand where we are standing. So it is a huge process, reporting an error. It is not at all an easy thing. And always encourage the self-reporting rather than a third person finding it out in the audit. And these reporting, these CQAs are discussed in the PTC committee, that is Pharmacy and Therapeutic Committee, and also in the Quality and Validation Committee. So the goal is to develop a culture of patient safety and design the system that are fault tolerant, so that when an individual error occur, it will not cause any harm to the patient. And feedback and dissemination can create an awareness of errors that can improve the system designs to reduce or eliminate the errors. So coming to the next slide as conclusion, okay. Maybe you are waiting for this slide. I hope that I have not bored you, but I have few tips to just to tell you. Do a good assessment of the patient, understand any allergy, contraindication, and clinical condition, and follow hand hygiene and other infection control protocols, which has to be followed before administration of medication. Ensure consent if it is required. That is, especially when we are giving any chemo medication, we may have to obtain consents, or when we are giving uh, any other high alert medications or a costly medication, we may have to obtain a consent. So we have to ensure that the consent is taken. Inform the consultant if any variation of clinical history or any allergic reactions, and check vital signs and document. Some high alert medications, when we are giving, we have to monitor the vital signs. Confirm patient identity with an ID band and do the explanation of medication or educate the patient. Prepare the medicine under the laminar floor or double check, or the dilution has to be proper, that we may have to understand and do it. And each infusion to be labeled with the name of the drug, dose, date, and time. And store the medication as per the direction. Maintain a log for the temperature and humidity, and observe the patient frequently, and document in the treatment chart with the date, time, and signature. So with the conclusion, I just wanted to tell you, generally we agree upon that the definition of the patient safety is do no harm. Next one. So thank you. With that, I hope that I could clear few things. And now I will take a few questions. I will try to answer that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lata Nonis, for such an insightful session. We already have a few questions lined up. The first one here is, can you specify a bit more on stop orders?
Stop orders.
Yes.
Okay. If there is a omit order, or thank you for that. Okay. See, if there is a omit order or a stop order, see, it is generally written. Okay. And what we may have to see that is it has to be striked with a single line. Any stop it with a single line, or the policy should be right against that the stop, and the physician have to sign with the date and time. Is it clear?
Sure, thank you. The next question is, what are the strategies to overcome errors due to combination of drugs?
Okay, so that is what, see, what we have done is, see, there are many medication books available, like a SIMS or MIMS or a physician desk reference. Okay, so if we have those availability of those books in the system, wherever the medications are diluted, okay, if they can have a double check of that. Second is continuous training to improve the knowledge if it is a frequent medications, because most of the organization will have a formulary. Okay, if the formulary have these medications are regularly coming, and if any errors have happened, if the CQI is raised along with that, so along with that, the training also to these either to the staffs or the clinical pharmacy, whoever is assisting to give them medication, it will help.
Okay. The third question.
Referral books are very important. Reference of medications are very important. It has to be available, not in the cupboards. It has to be at the desktops.
Sure, thank you. The third question is, can you tell us something about the ways to dispose expired and unused drugs in a hospital?
Okay, usually what we have done is we do not want to dispose at the at the department. So we have brought up a policy that to first of all, we have to prevent the expiry drugs in our hospital. That it should be the way how we have to come up with the policy. So for that, we have to have a policy. In our hospital, what we have done is we have regular check of expiry medication, and we do give 3 months expiry to be removed, and it will go back to the pharmacy. And if we have a system direct intended to the patient, IP issue, what we tell in our organization. So if we do the IP issue, first FIFO method will be used for that, and expiries can be removed. So there is no expiry, because we should not have, it's a huge national waste. So we should prevent having an expired drugs actually. But if it is for by mistake, if it is there, we should have a policy, check prior 3 months prior to remove that and give back to the pharmacy. Please do not discard at the any substation levels, and it has to be documented very well.
Sure. Oh, we'll be able to take 2 more questions after this.
No.
So one more question which says, what are the measures that can be taken to sensitize consultants on prescribing errors?
See, prescribing error. So that is the reason why the huge responsibility lies with the clinical pharmacists in our organization, and we have a pharmacy and therapeutic committee. Okay, so they do support it. So the clinical pharmacist goes on rounds, and we have a few senior nurses are my medication champions. They go do the rounds and only do the audit of all these prescription errors, like how they have, is it has been legibly written or it has been written in the capital letters. So when we do the audits, we get all those things, and then we present that in the validation meeting or in the pharmacy and therapeutic committee meeting. And there is something called performance improvement letter is issued to even to the consultant from the medical director to alert them, stating that you are a continuous faulter. So with that, we are able to, may not be at the nurse level or a staff level to inform, but if they are courageous enough to talk to the consultant in a right manner, because usually the prescription is done, as I told, the transcription is done either by the RMO, duty RMO, or by the registrar. So the nurses also can explain to them that, yes, please, doctor, you may have to write it in the capital letter. This is the policy.
Sure. Last question for this session. Can you give us some information regarding handling of chemotherapeutic medication during preparation for administration?
So what we have come up again, it is hospital, but please understand, chemotherapy medication are high alert medications. Okay, so it has to be handled very safe, in a safe manner, first of all. Second is, most of the chemotherapeutic medications are very costly medications. So we should not have a room to miss even a drop of medications from that. So what we have done, the policy, it is, since it is coming as a high alert medication, the policy states that there should be a double check. So there is a senior or a supervisor will be checking the medicine along with the preparation. Before preparation of the medication, the staff have to wear full PPE. That is very important. Okay, and so for the safety of the staff. And third thing is, all these medications are prepared in a cabinet, safety cabinet, biosafety cabinet. Cabinet have to be on before preparation of drug. And when the preparation is happening, the medical case file is just in front of the patient, even at the biosafety cabinet, wherever it is situated. And after preparation of the medicine, so the double check is done. Even before that, the CP is doing a reconciliation of these medicines. So there is a role for the clinical pharmacist also. Okay, after the preparation, they make sure that the dilution is written properly with diluent, the medicine, what rate to be given, and what is the dose, what is the route, and who have prepared, what is the time, date and time with the signature. And then only they will be starting the medicine.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks once again, Ms. Lata Nonis, for gracing this session and sharing insights on medication without harm. I'm sure it was great for all the participants too, because we've been receiving messages from everyone saying that it was a very informative session and a great presentation too. So thank you so much once again. Thank you, Varun.
Thank you.
I would like to thank all the participants who actually took out time and attended the IPC Health virtual class. We will be sharing a Google form with some questions on today's session. Please do share your feedback with us. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all for patient listening.
Thanks, Lata. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And every